So welcome to this video on Agile Procurement in a nutshell. Together with me today I have Mattias Skarin, who is a well-known expert on Agile Procurement. So Mattias, could you start by letting us know when should you use Agile Procurement and what might it bring to your organization?
Basically, if you are procuring something that requires innovation, if you are procuring something which is very complex, and when you expect things to change, that, okay, there's some knowledge that I have, and there's some things we'll learn along the way. That said, you shouldn't use Agile contracting if you're procuring something which is more a very standardized product, like a pen or or salt for the roads. That's not the case for Agile contracting.
Okay, good to know. So when you do an Agile procurement, are there any specific steps that you take?
Yes, there are, I would say, three key building blocks that makes up Agile contracting. And what's most important to remember is that they strengthen each other. So the combined effect you get is when you add all three. So this said, you could use one of the building blocks or two, but the magic happens when you have all three in place. And those three are basically that you procure on impact goals and on needs. The second is that you choose the right partner, and you choose a partner based on competence and real capabilities. And final building block is that you collaborate towards your impact goal. So these three together makes up an awesome end result.
Okay, cool. Do you have any more details in how to do these three steps?
Absolutely. So let's dive into them. So let's take the first one. Procure using impact goals and needs. So what's the crux here? Well, the crux is normally that the pre-study of any big project normally takes years. And I would stick up my nose a little bit and say the procurement of anything does not need to take more than maybe 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Usually it might take, I don't know, 4 to 6 months, maybe.
1 year and a half, 2 years more plus,
Yes.
right? So, but then you ask, so how? Like, how is that even feasible? How can you even think about that? Well, it's actually feasible, and there are three parts that makes up this. The first is to agree on what is the impact goal that you're trying to achieve. So, and to prioritize this. And what you're doing here is you create a scene for innovation, because you give leeway to your partners and the people that are going to do the work to find the path towards the effect goal. You're not telling them how, you're just telling them, this is what matters to me, and this is what I prioritize. And the second part of the procurement is understanding the needs of different target groups. So what's the needs for the people that's going to use your solution?
So the end user needs.
The end user needs, but it can also be internal needs. But you're trying to clarify which are they, and in what order do I prioritize them?
But not the solution.
Not the solution. And this is what you leave out. That said, there is a final component that normally comes into place, and that is that you describe some of the system qualities of the solution. So you might say things like, well, it matters a lot for me that it is safe, or it matters a lot to me that it is of a certain performance. But you're not telling them how to achieve this. You're saying, this is what matters to me. Now, the best example I could give you of a real product that was developed in this way is the Toyota Prius. When it came to light, the preconditions or the sort of effect goal that was set to the people that's going to develop this car, before it even existed, was basically, we need a car to transport people. It needs to take 5 passengers, and it should consume less than half a liter per 10 kilometers. And that's it. That's from the process where they actually started developing that car, which was a solution. And they didn't know what proposal system to use. They didn't know what the car should look like, etc. That is the how. That is what the people that they took into the project gave them the leeway to find us how to solve this.
So this maybe is the biggest difference from traditional procurement.
It is a very huge difference.
Dig into the exact solution and how to do things.
No, but you understand the effect goal or the impact goal, how to prioritize this, you understand the needs, and you understand some of the system qualities.
Okay. But then you also need to find the right partner to do this with. How do you evaluate the different vendors maybe, and how do you find the people that can actually solve these problems?
So competence here is a key factor. And what we're trying to do is to try and find a partner that has the right competence and the right capabilities that can work with us and find out the how. And so what we do is basically we try to check, when you use Agile contracting, the real capabilities of a partner. So what do we mean by that? Well, you know, traditionally in procurement, people fill out forms saying I can do X, I can do Y, or I can tick off this number of boxes in the solution. But how do you know that that is real? You don't. That could just be something I promised to proceed in the process.
Definitely.
So we do it another way. And this is also for the benefit of both parties because it takes less time. It's the experience is this is way better, mostly even from the partners we've seen that did not get a deal. So, for example, in the steps, you would validate the true competence of the teams on the people that's going to do the work. So you might do a small pilot or proof of concept during a short period of time, maybe 2 weeks, 4 weeks, to validate the partner. Or you might squeeze it a little bit tighter and you might say, maybe we do the code camp during one day. One day, right? You might have multiple vendors, one day, do a code camp. And what you're doing there is validating not only that they have the right competence, you're also validating that they can do a solution with a certain quality. And you might also validate that they can collaborate with you, that they are proactive. And a couple of things which are normally very, very hard to figure out before you even meet the people. Now, there is a condition tied to this, and that is it's the same people that take part in the pilot or take part in the code camp that have to be there in the final project. And that's a precondition the partners have to agree with in order to proceed in the procurement process.
Okay, but a lot of times it's quite difficult to say that these people will be available when you start the actual delivery of the project. But maybe you try to keep very short time boxes here so that you can start right away. Is that something that you usually talk about?
Yes, so you're right. There is a precondition, which is if the vendor or the partner that you're going to work with is not willing to let these people be part of the real project, well, they actually exclude themselves from the process. So it's very simple. That said, you want to make it quite simple for them also, because you want to consider that if this takes a lot of time, should I keep people ready for an infinite amount of time? No. So normally this process is actually a lot quicker than what you would have in traditional processes, because the phase of evaluating the partners here could be something like 2 weeks, like from 2 to 4 weeks or 3 weeks, with 1 day or 2 days being the day that you have to be there on site. And getting your key people or the people that you want that's going to take part in the real process and getting them out for 1 day, if you are giving enough heads up, normally this is doable. So shortened period of time, given a heads up, means this is actually a slower, a faster and more honest process.
Much quicker, it seems. Do you also pay the vendors for the time that they spend on this?
Yes, this is very important because it's you want a win-win for here from both parties. So normally, yes, you pay the vendor for the time they spent, and you pay them for basically the cost coverage for being there. Yes.
Also very honest and transparent.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's good. So having transparency and not discriminating people within the process, and also treat people equally. Is that something that Agile Procurement handles in a good way?
I would say so, absolutely, because you are being very open to what conditions that would enable you to choose a certain provider. There is no difference here, but what the difference is that you actually are giving people the chance to show what they've got. So seeing is believing here, and this creates a good scene for really skilled providers that might not be very big or have huge procurement departments that can fill out piles of paper to even proceed in the process. You make it a lot easier for medium-sized partners with high skill to compete on a similar level as big partners. So
really good.
This creates, I would say, a better state for innovation. And it enables you as a customer to reach the skills that you really that would really differentiate your project.
So would you have any examples of when this has happened and if it's actually achieved more innovation?
Sure. So you mean case studies in terms of agile contracting? Yes, there are a few. And if we backtrack maybe 5, 6, 10 years, there wouldn't be so many. But interestingly, there are quite some. Let's mention a few. So if we take just Sweden, where we work, Mia, there, I would talk about, for example, in the public sector, we have TLV, who is a public partner and public department in Sweden, who's procured the upgrade of the legacy system and the digitalization of their processes using Agile contracting. And some of the comments that they've seen is, and they're maybe 1 year into the implementation, is wow, I've never thought this could work so well. Now we have a team in place who work inside, closely knitted where we are, and they deliver things every second week. Wow, I never thought that was possible. It has resolved a ton of pain from the people that had their own legacy system. So high speed, better quality, good collaboration. That's one case. Then I'm gonna stretch myself a little bit, and I'm gonna pull another case which is not from the IT sector. So I would pull a case from construction here. So if you take the hospital in Karlstad, which is a 100 million euro project, that was procured and built using Agile contracting.
That's a huge.
It's a huge project with multiple vendors, and inside this project, it was built on time. It was built on budget. It was actually runnable 3 months before the actual deadline. It has won a number of distinguished quality prizes in the construction sector. It also has created a hospital where the people inside the hospital want to work. And this was built using Agile contracting. So just to give you 2 illustrations of cases from 2 different sectors.
That's 2 amazing, I would say, examples where you can digitize and deliver constant innovation within the organization.
With all legacy systems.
Yeah, definitely. And that's super, super tricky for those who might not know to be able to do that with a vendor as well. But also then to build a hospital where you could increase the motivation of the people working to also deliver better value to the customers, I would say then. And also
Yes.
in a smaller budget than maybe they thought in the beginning, and also before time, which
Yes.
has maybe never happened before, I would say. It's very unique.
It's very unique, and this is actually creating a revolution inside the industry right now in construction.
It's amazing. So would you say that there are any common pitfalls when starting to maybe thinking about working in this way with Agile procurement?
Well, there are a few pitfalls, of course. Doing something new is never easy. So you have to learn to ride a bike, but in another way. So one of the common pitfalls you will probably see is that when you make this case, maybe internally, is that you'll achieve a lot of, we can't do that because X, Y, Z. And normally this is based on old habits rather than a real blocker.
And
A good
that this is how you need to do it, right?
yeah. So I mean, you have old habits, meaning I've always done it in this old way, so that's the only way that is feasible. And to give you a real example, one of the things that might pop up when you pitch this internally would be, you can't do that because there's a legislation that tells you X. And if you hear that, you just take a step back and say, well, realize that the legislation very rarely tells you how to do it. It just tells you why or what. So legislation is never a blocker, but all habits are. So that's the first pitfall. That when you see this, when you get these types of excuses, we can't do this because of, problem solve that instead of giving up. There are solutions to all this. In the case that we mentioned, the people inside managed to find a solution, and actually the solution was often a lot easier than the previous approach. But you have to be able to explore it in order to see it.
So start experimenting and maybe finding one smaller procurement that you could try this on. So maybe not the biggest hospital the first time, maybe something smaller. Maybe your cabin out back in the garden is a better start project.
I agree. And you always learn by trying things. So this is to a very good point, Mia. You take a small example, a small real case. You start from that, maybe with a partner that you have trust with, that done things with quality, and you give that a try first. And when that turns out to be okay, you expand this and you take something which is a little bit trickier. And that's how all these cases have done it, more or less.
So maybe not work with multiple vendors the first time, a big project, but maybe something that one vendor can help you with.
That's a good start. I mean, this has been done in cases with multiple vendors as well, but that requires a little bit more thinking. And if you go into that direction, you might consider bringing in an outside expert to ballpark different thoughts and different solutions, just to make sure that you don't get stuck in the process.
Good. So I think that sums it up really, really well, that you can achieve really great result in less time, and that you can start with something smaller maybe and ask for help and look for good solutions that's been tried before, right? And we share those kind of solutions and also materials on our website that you can find here in the video in the end. Both in Swedish, of course, lots of materials, but also in English.